Hello and welcome to the Data Privacy Lawyer. Today's review, we're going to be looking at the Ritz Paris. So we're going to be looking at the process flow related to cookies for this organization. I had already put the URL at the top. This is the first time I'm interacting with the site, and I wanted us to walk through what good cookie compliance looks like. So upon landing on the Ritz Paris website, we can see the cookie banner. Okay, and we've got three buttons: cookie settings, reject all, accept all. Now, one thing I want to point out is every single one of these buttons are the same color. Okay, I've talked about this in other reviews in the past, but there is a terminology in the data protection space. It's called dark patterns. And basically a dark pattern is basically a way in which companies will try and influence how a consumer interacts with the site. That's it put plainly. Now, there's different ways that a dark pattern can come about. But the reason I call this out is because it's really important for companies not to influence how a consumer interacts with the site. And one of the ways that this was done in the past was companies would put different colors on the buttons. Reject all might be white, accept all might be blue, cookie settings might be orange. They would change the colors to try and influence how a consumer interacted with the site. And I've called this out because I think it's really excellent and definitely something that more companies should take into consideration when they present the cookie banner. The second thing I want to make mention of is the fact that I am accessing the site from the United States. And as far as I understand for now, the Ritz Paris has taken a global-centric approach to cookie flow and cookie compliance. In the United States, the obligations for organizations is to present consumers the opportunity to opt out of cookies, meaning that as I interact with the site, it is acceptable and permissible for the Ritz to obtain cookies and utilize cookies as I interact with the site, but to present me the opportunity to opt out of certain cookies. In the European Union, it's different. As an individual lands on the site, which I landed on this site, I put the URL in and I clicked enter. Prior to the collection of any type of cookies, European Union residents are presented the opportunity to opt in. So right now, there are no cookies that are being utilized as I interact with the site, because at the first instance, I've been presented with the cookie banner and nothing's going to happen unless I update my cookie settings, reject all, or accept all. Now, I always take a look at the language here because this aligns with the cookie banner that we're about to review, right? We use cookies and other trackers in order to provide, analyze, and improve your user experience, customize the display, offer you services, commercial offers, and communications with content suited to your interests, etc. So what they're saying is these are the cookies we use. Now, this should be reflected in the cookie settings. Right? I should be able to edit any of these, providing, analyzing, or improving my user experience. I should see that here. This should be the first thing that should be presented on every site. Then we should be able to look at the cookie settings and manage our preferences. So I'm going to click that. Now, I want to talk a bit about this Privacy Preference Center. I love that there's a definition of what constitutes a cookie. And it also looks like they're utilizing a consent management platform. I don't know who's offering it. I've addressed some of them in the past. One of the more popular consent management platforms is OneTrust. And I know TrustArc also has an offering for consent management platforms. If you're a company and you're looking at getting a consent management platform, take a look at my description below. I'd love to speak with your organization. That being said, we can see here that they talk about strictly necessary cookies, performance, and targeting. Now, I am intrigued about the fact that we don't see personalization cookies, even though we can see customizing the display. I don't know how customizing the display fits into performance or targeting. Let's click it. Okay. So they also provide a definition of what constitutes performance. And then let's take a look at targeting as well. These cookies may be set through our site or advertising partners. They may be used by those companies to build a profile of your interests. Okay, I'm not entirely sure how it correlates, but I think that one recommendation I would have is if we're putting in the cookie banner that we provide, analyze, and improve the user experience, customize display, offer you services, commercial, etc., it would also be beneficial for the language to align in our definition of what constitutes performance cookies, targeting, and then those that are strictly necessary. So basically, this document and this document should align. The other thing I want to call to your reference again is all of the buttons are the same color again, right? Rejecting or confirming my choices, there's no distinction in the color. And then let's also look at the buttons, right? Again, this has been a very Euro-centric approach to cookies. I have been opted out. You know, performance cookies are not being collected until I decide to opt them in. And you can see the color changes. That's so important. What some organizations fail to see is when they work with a consent management platform, the opt-in and the opt-out is not clear. Sometimes these colors don't change. You can see this one is gray, right? Gray. If you choose to opt into performance cookies, it'll turn blue. Targeting cookies, the same, right? Strictly necessary cookies can't be changed because they allow the website to actually function, but companies need to make sure that this is aligned with this as well. I would rejig the language either on the banner or on the preference center to ensure that all of these are covered explicitly. If a performance cookie is the same as customizing the display, it should appear here. Offer you services, which does that align with, right? It's really important for those to align. I'm going to opt out, which I always do, and then I'm going to confirm my choices. At this point, now cookies are being collected, and only those that are strictly necessary. So those flow that should appear if you are a global organization and you are utilizing cookies on your website, that's how it should go. Banner, preference center, and then the actual cookie notice. Okay, let's open these. So they provided a definition of what constitutes a cookie, the type of cookies we use, strictly necessary. So they've actually provided a list. That's really very useful. I will say that it's far easier for organizations to put the information on the specific cookies in that preference center section as opposed to on the website, because if the cookies do change, then you're constantly having to update this cookie management web page URL, which could be burdensome for your organization. Whereas utilizing the consent management platform is going to make that so much easier. And there's generally a review that's done for your cookies so that if new cookies are added to the site, your preference center is going to manage all of that. How can you oppose the use of the cookies? So they've given you some insight on changing your cookie options. What's unique is that even though the Ritz Paris had that banner and the preference center, there's not a lot of insight in this cookie management page. I wonder if they have an alternate cookie policy. It may be that they do, but that's not going to be reviewed for this particular review. But I definitely thought it would be useful for organizations to see what it looks like when you have good cookie compliance practices. And then also there's always room for improvement because the laws are constantly changing. And there's often guidance that's provided by different regulatory bodies on how cookies can be utilized and what obligations companies have when utilizing cookies on their site. So I really hope you enjoyed this review. If you're looking for help with your cookie compliance, take a look at my description below and I will see you in another review.